You probably use one of those ridiculous tops that you talk about on your...
No, I am just using plain old top.
How do you manage? I mean, that's like poverty top.
Ask the Hosts, episode 15. I'm Joe.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Martin.
Hello, chaps. The idea of this show is very simple. You send in your questions to show@askthehost.com and we answer them. The catch is they can be about anything except Linux and open source. Before we get started, just a quick thank you to everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. You can learn more at askthehost.com/support, and patrons get these episodes 2 weeks before everyone else. So check it out. Right, the first question. Ross asks, what celebrity do you look like? Well, I'll start by saying that Aaron looks exactly like Mikel Arteta, the Arsenal manager.
I was going to go for that guy from 300, at least from the neck down.
Exactly
the same. Yeah. The joys of a podcast is that none of you know if it's true or not.
But you do look exactly like the Arsenal manager. It's uncanny.
This is one of the benefits of not being a football fan, and that's probably just lost me any of the 3 followers I currently have. But as a Kiwi, then we sort of support the other shaped ball.
Yeah. I used to be into football years ago, and I know who Arteta is because he was a super point-winging player in my fantasy football league in like 2004 or something.
Ah.
An attacking midfielder, I believe. And here endeth my football knowledge.
Well, I've never really been told that I look like a celebrity, but I do remember once pre-beard, so this was when I was quite young, going through some of my dad's old LPs, and I found a Black Sabbath record. I think it was Sabotage, and I thought I looked quite a lot like a young Ozzy Osbourne when I didn't have a beard.
Yeah.
I can kind of see it, I suppose.
I mean, it's hard now to think of that and not think of how Ozzy Osbourne looks now, which is not the most flattering.
This is the thing. You see, I found it having been watching the Osbournes on TV at that point, and then I thought, oh, he hasn't aged well then. Is this my future?
Well, I thought to myself, I don't know that I look like anyone in particular, fairly distinctive in a sort of a blends in, nothing special kind of a way. So I thought to myself, I know how we do this. We ask an AI. So armed with a few photographs and some random AI on the internet, I uploaded some photographs and, well, mixed results. So I think I was right in that I don't particularly look like anyone, because the best match I got was 33% match. And this was for Rock Hudson, who's been dead since 1985, but was an actor back in sort of, the 60s, 70s, 50s, that sort of era. And I'm going to say, I think that the main category for matching me up with Rock Hudson was the photo I uploaded for that one. Was a black and white photo of me, and it was a black and white photo of Rock Hudson, and I think that was the overwhelming comparator that had been used here to come up with that match. So I uploaded some colour photos, and there was one match that came up several times, not the first one all the time, but they were always in like the first 3 or 4 at a 28% match, and that was Kevin James, the actor who is known for Mall Cop. And again, I think the AI is a little simplistic here, because what we seem to have in common is we are both smiley, plus-sized gentlemen.
But on the upside, the Chinese government will now find it much easier to follow you around the streets.
Yeah.
Do you ever watch Would I Lie to You?
I'm aware of it, but I've never seen it. I'm only really aware of it from the memes.
Whenever I watch that, I have a little chuckle to myself, because I always imagine Martin as David Mitchell and Alan as Lee Mack, especially when Alan's a bit more beardy.
Fair enough. Well, I don't really look like a celebrity as such. I look like a character, a beloved animated character who's green. So if I didn't have my beard, I look like Shrek. It's the bottom line. And it turns out that was my nickname behind my back for many years in my local town. So that made me almost believe in conspiracy theories, because they kept it from me for, I think, 2 or 3 years. But then it did come out eventually. So maybe conspiracy theories are a load of bollocks.
He's a nice guy, though.
The things I have never been able to stand Shrek because of his terrible accent that is just like, it's just like a bad Scottish accent. I just have never watched it as a result. And then I found that out and I was like, right, I'm literally never watching that again. UpPSP asks, what method of reading books do you prefer? As in traditional books, ebooks, audiobooks, and what are your favourite novels?
I find stories immensely enjoyable, but I find the act of reading and the physicality of a book to be quite hard work. So I do listen to a lot of audiobooks and very much enjoy them. Occasionally, and a lot in the past, particularly when I was commuting, I would have ebooks with text-to-speech as a way of consuming them on the go.
Oh, doesn't that just get painful, though, after a while?
Not really. I mean, I've found some reasonably good voices and you kind of zone out the oddities, and you can, like when you're reading a particular book, you can add in, like correct the pronunciations that come up a lot that it gets wrong.
Ah, right, like names and stuff.
Yeah, names and places and like common acronyms, because it was mostly sci-fi.
Right.
So you'd always end up with like names of planets and aliens and stuff that it would get wrong. But if you typed it in phonetically once, then it would then get it right the rest of the time.
I did listen to The Martian. No, you mentioned sci-fi books, and I remember being out and about walking, listening to it, and just staying out really late, just walking round and round. Just I wanted to. It was a real page turner. If that, I don't know what the audiobook equivalent of that is.
I'm going to steal a term from Gary and say yes in response to this question. I listen to audiobooks and I read ebooks quite a lot, and I read physical books. I tend to read a lot of ebooks because I really like reading with the backlight on the book, and that's much easier than having a light on or finding a good bit of light on the train or whatever. And they're nice and thin, so you can just slip it into your work bag without noticing, whereas I still use the library, believe it or not. I go and get books out of the library, and sometimes you don't know what you're going to get, so you end up with some big hardcover version of a book, and that can be quite big in there with your laptop and everything else.
Don't you get audiobooks from the library?
Yeah, I get mine from the library as well, on BorrowBox.
My local library doesn't really have much in the audiobook catalogue that interests me.
I ended up strangely getting into reading or listening to a whole lot of Charles Dickens books on BorrowBox. And so I ended up reading or listening to a whole bunch of those because there was some point I was jumping on a plane or something, and I grabbed the first thing I saw in the list of BorrowBox available e-audiobooks and then ended up listening to that. And once I'd listened to one, I listened to a few of them, but they're pretty full on.
There's a project, I think it's called LibriVox, which is like Project Gutenberg, but for audiobooks. So it's people recording their own version of out-of-copyright books as audiobooks. So I think I've listened to quite a few Sherlock Holmes books like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could do that because I know instinctively that the editing is going to be bad.
Oh, yeah. Some of them are pretty terrible.
Yeah, I bet there's lots of cut-off breaths and, words running into each other and stuff like that. Just classic editing mistakes.
Surely you can just get Popey's voice to read out all of the public domain books these days.
Yeah, we should get on that.
I have only ever listened to one audiobook. So as a format, that doesn't really do anything for me. I read a lot of ebooks, but not for pleasure. It's mostly for research and learning. And I tend to do that at my desk. So it will be on the big screen and I read it at my leisure and it's here in front of me. When I read for pleasure, it's usually family holidays and I stack up 6 or 7 books for the trip, and it's part of the going away thing that I have actual books that are new. They smell like new books. They feel like new books. It's like the scents and smells on Christmas morning, they're as much as the Christmas morning experience as, the turkey in the oven and opening the presents and what have you. So I love to read proper books, ideally with a Long Island iced tea next to me on a sunbed under the shade. That's my ideal, and I can do that all the live long day, for as long as we're away. I love it.
To be fair, in that setting, I think I could do any of ebooks or audiobooks or anything else. It sounds pretty tranquil. I will say that the difference between audiobooks is vast. And there are some of them that are full cast productions of different characters. I remember listening to the His Dark Materials series, and they had a full BBC cast for that was very good. And some of the others, like the new Terry Pratchett Discworld novels, have been redone with good voices and things like that. And then you get other ones, and I just can't stand the person reading them, and I just move on.
Well, yeah, especially when they start like doing terrible voices and stuff.
Yeah, I'm currently going through the new castings of the Discworld ones. In my youth, I listened to the abridged versions on tape, which were read by Tony Robinson, which are absolutely fantastic. But the unabridged versions are pretty poor by comparison, whereas these new ones are absolutely fantastic. But I got the audiobook of one of my favourite novels, which is Jennifer Government by Max Barry. And the audiobook of that is just dull, lifeless.
So I don't really read novels. That was the question. What kind of novels? I don't really read fiction. I never really have. I've read a few books. I read like Fight Club and Fear and Loathing, although that's kind of Fear and Loathing, sort of half fiction, half truth, and The Martian. But apart from that, I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks before I got into podcasts, and it would be almost exclusively science books about evolution and stuff like that, and physics, and I would say popular science, not textbooks or whatever, but just nicely dumbed down for the simple man science books is what I was into.
What, like Thinking Fast and Slow, that sort of thing? Or
I've not heard of that one. I'm trying to think. It was such a long time ago that I can't even, like some of the Dawkins books, for example, before he started going on about atheism, he had some very well-written, easy-to-understand books about evolution.
Yeah. Bill Bryson's got a couple of books. One of them, I think, is called A Brief History of Nearly Everything or something like that. That's a sort of a whistle-stop tour of sort of science from the Victorian era to the modern day. It's pretty good.
Yeah, but then I discovered podcasts, and
there is that.
Now my attention span is so low that I just can't be doing with it. Just the idea of listening to 8 hours of a book, like, just no way. We did actually listen to one for Linux After Dark, Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, which was just like just the most ridiculous, like West Coast American nonsense I've ever read. Well, and again, I listened to that as well, but I listened to it, I think, at like 1.5 speed or something, just to get through it.
Glowing endorsement, that.
Are any of you reading any novels at the moment then?
I'm about to read the last book in a trilogy that I have been reading for decades. Mark mentioned Discworld and all the rest of it, so I definitely subscribe to that genre of books, the sort of the fantasy, science-y, humorous genre, whatever, that categorizes. And so this trilogy, it's the Brentford trilogy by Robert Ranking. And that is now a trilogy of 11 books. The first of which was published in 1981. And the most recent was published in 2019. And they include such bangers as the Brentford Triangle, the Brentford Chainsaw Massacre, Sex, Drugs and Sausage Rolls, and Lord of the Ring Roads. They are vivid, brilliant stories full of the most oversized characters, and they're just joyous to read. And when you get to the end of them, you feel like you've left a group of friends with all of these characters that are no longer in your mind as you finish the book. So there's 11 of those to read and enjoy, and I highly recommend them.
So as I mentioned, I am working my way through the Discworld audiobooks at the moment. I've been through the Death family series, which ends in my favourite Discworld book, which is Thief of Time, and one of my favourite books overall. I'm now working my way through the Watch series, so I'm currently on The Fifth Elephant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of what I'm reading, I read a lot of, I don't know if you'd call it low fantasy. Is it high fantasy, the sort of elves and
Lord of the Rings stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I have read books like Lord of the Rings and stuff, but I'm not so into that. Tend to be more into ones that are a little bit unrealistic, more like, I don't know, The Painted Man or The Name of the Wind or Magician, those sorts of ones. And at the moment, I'm reading some of the John Gwynne trilogies, which are about angels and demons effectively, and the sort of medieval people who have to deal with them and do magic-y stuff to kind of deal with them, but just good kind of gritty, low fantasy books.
Ian asks, can you separate an artist's character and wrongdoings from their art?
Well,
Now, I instantly thought about Michael Jackson, maybe.
Rock and Roll Christmas is no longer in our Christmas playlist, so no, I can't.
Who's that?
Gary Glitter.
Oh, right, yeah, that's understandable.
I think it depends, like all of these things, right? If you're talking about one of those people who defines their art in their kind of protest, then no. Like Banksy without politics doesn't make any sense, or the Sex Pistols, or even like some of the Beatles, you know, anti-Vietnam or whatever kind of music. Doesn't make any sense without it. But like, I don't care who some pop singer votes for in the elections or whatever.
I've been thinking about this, and I think, of course I can, because otherwise I'd basically never enjoy anything, and I'd spend all my time researching people to find out if they've ever done anything wrong before I listen to their music or buy their books or see them in a film. But then it springs to mind that there's a few people who I absolutely can't separate, one of which, bizarrely enough, is Guns N' Roses, because although I enjoy some of their songs, I saw what was billed as Guns N' Roses, but was mainly Axl Rose having a tantrum Download Festival one year. And since then, I can't listen to their songs without just being annoyed about it. So my answer to the question is mostly, but not always.
I think I'm a massive hypocrite about this because I won't listen to the Smiths anymore because of Morrissey and his politics. But I will listen to Michael Jackson.
I won't listen to the Smiths either, but for other reasons.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Mark.
I really used to like them, but now I just can't do it. Well, dreary's up my alley, what can I say?
The 80s were bad enough without him crooning about all of his misery.
I wouldn't remember.
But I think with Michael Jackson, it's because it wasn't like officially proven and then he died and then you can kind of have plausible deniability, even though we all know he was a wrong un.
I didn't prepare a particularly long answer to this question because I was like, it's complicated. And when you start thinking about the complicated nature of this, there are people that have made a significant impact on sort of popular culture or history who, in retrospect, we have found out have got some pretty unsavory characteristics about their personality or their behaviour. But you can't deny the contribution that they've made to sort of global history and culture. And it's very difficult to separate those things. And I think Michael Jackson definitely falls into that category. I'm sure everyone has heard songs by Michael Jackson at some point in their lives.
And enjoyed them, because they're good songs.
Mm-hmm.
On the whole, yeah.
However, I draw the line at Gary Glitter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if they've done something like really, really abhorrent and proper bang to rights for it, then yeah, I would never listen to Gary Glitter, even though he did have a couple of bangers.
So I think the thing there with like Gary Glitter, sort of the distinction in my mind is if they're still alive, I don't want to be doing anything that might be in service of them making an income. So I suppose that's kind of my sort of approach to this, but it's not black and white. It's complicated.
What if he went on the Pirate Bay and downloaded his albums? Then he definitely wouldn't get any money from it.
I'm not in a hurry to go and download the back catalogue of Gary Glitter, to be honest with you.
But it's funny that you said politics don't bother you, Aaron, but they do to me, like massively. If I know that someone is voting for the wrong side, then it really puts me off them.
I think it might put me off the people, or maybe I can kind of separate the music from the people unless it's sort of inherently part of the piece of art itself. I don't know. I might have particular views about Kanye West when he's tweeting, but then I can listen to Gold Digger and appreciate the merits or lack thereof of that song independently of what I think of Kanye West. But I do take your point, Wimpy, about supporting people and making a bit of a moral stand with your choices. But normally when I'm listening to music, I'm not putting that much thought into it.
And sometimes it just happens, right? Music just comes on. I play mixes all the time. I could well be listening to people that have done bad stuff and I might not know.
I'm not very aware most of the time of what I'm listening to. I heard a song the other day and I thought, oh, this is quite good. I wonder if I can find this. And then found out it was like the current #1. So clearly I'm not the most up with things.